The previous basket is under review.
Welcome in to another episode of Weekend Under Review. That is Matthew Winick. I am Brian Rauf. This is more of a week ahead preview because we got a bracket. We have a bracket. We are going through a full NCAA tournament preview. We are finally here. We've been with you from exhibition season, breaking out exhibition games. It feels like forever ago. Now we're finally to it. Finally to the games that matter. I can't wait. If you are not already, now is the time to subscribe to Basket Under Review. We have legitimate in-depth scouting reports for every automatic bid, every conference tournament champion in the country. That is up on basketunderreview.com. The NCAA tournament content we already have on the site is phenomenal. We have a lot more coming this week. You will not have access to all of it if you are not a subscriber to Basket Under Review. So make sure you subscribe today. Not only will you get access to all the paywall content as a Basket Under Review subscriber, you'll also get access to the Discord, which is where Shirley Donovan posts all of his intel and scoops on coaching changes, transfer portal rumors that he's hearing, recruiting shifts that happen with coaching hires and whatnot. There's no better place to be right now than in that Discord. Subscribe to Basket Under Review. Again, you get access to all of the paywall content at basketunderreview.com and access to the Discord. So make sure you go subscribe today. All right, Matthew, we have the bracket. I filled it out. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see. Before we dive into that, though, obviously there was a lot that happened this weekend with conference tournaments and more tickets being punched. We're not going to dive into all of these specifically because there are so many games that happen and we don't have time to go into all of those. But I am curious if there's anything that stood out to you from what happened this weekend or if there's anything that changed your mind about a team or teams that happened this weekend.
One big takeaway. We overreacted about Purdue. And I don't mean we as in we thought they were bad, because they're still not good. We as a general public overreacted from their Big Ten title victory. I forget which one of the CBS analysts, I think it might have been Clark Kellogg, I don't want to single him out, picked Purdue to win the national championship. 5 days ago, they were dead. And then they beat a bad Northwestern team, beat Nebraska, who is a pretty bad matchup for Purdue, beat UCLA without Donovan Dent or Tyler Bilodeau, and then had a really, really best performance of the year against Michigan. They were awesome, but everyone watched. And everyone's like, Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn, this team's amazing. Where have you been for the last 3 months? This team's not that good, and they don't play defense. They're not winning the national championship. 4 days do not define a season, and we've learned 4 months that there are huge flaws with this Purdue team. They are not winning the national championship. They're not.
I think the thing with Purdue is because of all the preseason hype and because of what they did show during a good portion of non-conference play, there's always been that part in the back of our minds of what we saw against Michigan on Sunday is what this team can be. And we have seen it. We just hadn't seen it for a couple of months. And so there is some confirmation bias if you thought Purdue was going to be good, that, oh, yeah, they finally did this here. I think there was some of that with Vanderbilt, too. I know Arkansas won the SEC tournament, but Vanderbilt beating Florida was one of the more surprising results of the weekend and probably the most surprising result of conference tournament season, given the way Florida has been playing. Potential Sweet 16 matchup in that region, by the way. Florida.
And now everyone's going to go against Florida because they lost so badly to Vanderbilt.
There's that, and
you got to it's too much.
Conference tournaments are a lot of fun. They can tell you a lot of things, but it is important to remember that it is, 1 or 2 data points from a set of 34 as opposed to what is truth right now. So we're here to help you sort through.
Go ahead. Put it this way. Think about how many mid-major top seeds that were so clearly the best team in their conference didn't win the conference tournament. And that's an even bigger deal there. And now we don't apply that logic to high major conferences, right? The best team doesn't win the conference more often than not.
Yep, it's true. It's true. I wonder if there was a little bit of different expectations this year because of how good the best teams have been for majority of the season. But whether it be injuries or kind of some struggles down the stretch, I do think a good number of them have looked more mortal the last couple weeks than they did previously.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I think that people are going to, pick against one seeds probably too much because of that. Duke looked susceptible. Arizona very well could have lost to Iowa State. And then obviously Florida and Michigan did lose. They're still the 4 best teams in the country. Don't get it wrong.
Order of business as we go through this, we are going to go through each region by region, by breaking down all the first round matchups. So we're going to go East region first, which is Duke's region, then the West region, which is Arizona's, Midwest, which is Michigan's, and then the South, which is Florida's. So the number 1 overall seed, number 2 overall seed, and so on and so forth, getting through there. Once we go through all of them, we will have our final 4 picks we will give you and our national championship picks we will give you. Excited to get there, but first we're going to break down the matchups that we know are going to happen. Starting in the East region, Duke and Siena. I think this is maybe, I don't want to say a tougher first round matchup than Duke would have preferred as the 1 overall seed. I mean, Siena is a pretty good team, particularly for a MAC team. They've done well for themselves. I don't know if I'm concerned about like an upset here, but if one were to happen, what does Siena do well that Duke needs to be worried about?
These teams are actually very similar in their own way. They both play about 6-7 players. They don't love to play fast. They're slower teams. They're both led by a forward star, obviously Cameron Boozer for Duke and Gavin Doty for Siena. But the thing is, it's like a low major version of Duke. And a high major version of Duke is going to be the low major version of Duke. Yeah, it's not going to be a 50-point game. It's probably going to be in the 20s, 30s, nothing insane. And it will be very slow because neither team is going to push.
No, and for Duke, with the concerns about Caleb Foster's injury, and Pat Ngongba, as of now, they expect him to be back. They held him out of the ACC tournament so that he would be healthy for the NCAA tournament. We'll see if he plays in that game. I don't know if they need him to play in that game, but it's not like Siena has a ton of size anyway. Interesting to see how that matchup is there. I think for Duke, this is one of those things where you want to get in there, handle business, get out of there, still healthy, focus on the second round matchup. The second round matchup is going to be against the winner of Ohio State and TCU. Ohio State has really been playing well over the last month or so. TCU, we've talked about on this show the last couple weeks in terms of how good they are against good teams and how bad they are against mediocre teams. But we're in the tournament here. This is a matchup that I think is very intriguing because of how well Ohio State is playing right now and how well Bruce Thornton has been playing all season long.
TCU is one of the best pick and roll defensive teams in the country. They do a fantastic job. Send two to the ball, and do not let your on-ball point guard beat you. It's just not happening. They just played Christian Anderson, who, like Bruce Thornton, is an unbelievable on-ball scorer and commands a ton of attention. He went 4 of 11 from the field, 9 assists, 6 turnovers. If that's what Bruce Thornton does for Ohio State, they're not winning this game because he has to be a superstar, and they did not want to. The Big Ten teams don't do that. Big Ten teams are not that aggressive. Bruce Thornton has the ball in his hands against a Big Ten team. TCU will let everybody but Bruce Thornton beat them, and that's the way to beat this Ohio State team.
It is. Royal and Mobley have been playing well over the last couple of weeks, and it's why Ohio State has had this surge. They were a bubble team a couple weeks ago, and now they're safely in as an 8 seed. Took advantage of some of the other bubble teams stumbling, but you've seen those guys play well. That's going to determine if they win this game, right? As if Bruce Thornton gets some help, and if you get 15, 20 points from one or both of those guys, that's going to obviously tilt things in the Buckeyes' favor. Who would you pick in this matchup between Ohio State and TCU?
I'm going TCU. I just think that Ohio State needs to win a certain way, and they're not going to be able to do that here.
I'm going TCU as well. I think the way they play against good teams, the way the defense performs against good teams, I'm going to go with them. St. John's in Northern Iowa is the 5-12 matchup in the East region. Northern Iowa is a team both you and I had kind of circled as, hey, this is a team that is better than their record indicates because they were not healthy for a stretch. I would have liked to have seen them get a better matchup for themselves than St. John's, particularly with the way St. John's has been playing. Do you think there's a chance for an upset here, given how good Northern Iowa is when they are healthy, or has been when they've been healthy?
So St. John's is probably the best 5 seed, but this is the worst matchup of any 5-12 for the higher, better team. I think if there were a 5-12 upset I would pick, and I don't know if I'm going to pick one, I think it would be this one. And the reason why is Northern Iowa is one of the best teams in the country at making you shot makers. You do not get to the free throw line against them, and you do not get free throws against them. At least the mid-major teams they've played, that's been the case. St. John's is extremely physical and aggressive. You just saw one of the most physical games I've maybe ever seen in the Big East final against UConn. Northern Iowa is going to take that and force St. John's to play that way and force the refs to make calls because they don't foul. And in a game where it's shot making versus shot making, like, yes, St. John's has better shot makers, but not by that much because this is not a St. St. John's team, who is predicated on shot making. That's not their biggest strength. Of course, Josan San and Ian Jackson big games could be different. But if Northern Iowa makes 5 more threes than St. John's, they could win this.
Northern Iowa, they shot 70%, 60% for pretty much every game in the Missouri Valley title run. But they are a defense-first team, and they have won games with their defense, mostly by limiting opponents' three-point attempts and effectiveness from three. St. John's doesn't want to shoot threes anyway, right? If they can keep St. John's off the glass, that's a big thing. That's a huge part of their defense, is limiting you to one shot. I'm going to lean heavily in St. John's favor in terms of their ability to offensive rebound with their massive size advantage against Northern Iowa. In that sense, on the flip side, Northern Iowa does not offensive rebound at all. It's not a priority for them. They want to get back on defense and limit the transition opportunities, which you need to do against St. John's. If there's one thing this comes down to, I think it's St. John's winning the offensive glass, or Northern Iowa winning the defensive glass. The rebound battle on that end of the court. I'm going to trust St. John's. I'm going to trust Ripatino. I'm going to trust the size advantage the Johnnies have there. What about you?
I'm still going to go St. John's, but there's a world in which Northern Iowa gets St. John's into their style of game, and then the Johnnies could be in a little trouble.
Winner of that game will play the winner of the 4-13 matchup between Kansas and Cal Baptist. If you were asleep Saturday night when Cal Baptist won the WAC, that was a fun game.
Everyone was asleep on the East Coast. If you stayed up on the East Coast, you made a mistake. Like, amazing game, but like that was 2:30 in the morning.
I didn't stay up. I watched it in the morning because my kids get up at 6 a.m. and I was not going to do that to myself. But that was a really fun game. Dominic Daniels was phenomenal at the end of that game. But they are playing Kansas. Tough matchup there. But Kansas has looked mortal the last couple of weeks.
So Cal Baptist has only played 6 teams in 2026 because they play in the WAC and it's a 17 WAC. And I think that's a huge disadvantage, especially because a lot of those WAC teams play the exact same style of ball. It's going to be kind of a shell shock to not get like an Abilene Christian, like super hard pressure basketball game against them. Earlier in the season, BYU lost by 31, Colorado lost by 8, and Utah by 6. So their one real opponent, 3 Big 12 opponents, is good prep for Kansas, but the one good one they played, BYU, was a 31-point loss. They're not.
Yeah, I think any recipe for a win for Cal Baptist involves Dominic Daniels being the best player on the court. And I don't see him doing that with how Kansas is likely going to defend him.
He's also like 5'9". It's a bit of a problem when you scale up.
Yes. Let's move down the region now to the bottom half. 6-11 matchup between Louisville and South Florida. This is going to be a popular upset pick because of how shaky Louisville has kind of looked, and South Florida has been one of the better mid-major programs or non-power programs all season long. Do you see an upset in the cards here?
If you were in the Discord that you should get a subscription to, if you're not, you would have seen that I said that I would eat a shoe if Memphis finished above South Florida in Ken Palm this year, and it wasn't even close. South Florida was 55 spots below Memphis to start the year and finished 55 spots ahead of them. This team's fantastic, and they are the more, would you agree, they're the more athletic team in this matchup? Like, genuinely, on paper, they're more athletic than Louisville?
Yes.
And so, inevitably, Louisville has struggled to, keep on-ball creators in front of them. I watched Wake Forest Louisville. It sticks in my brain. They couldn't guard Juke Harris to save their lives. And South Florida is just all downhill drivers getting to the hoop off a dribble penetration. I don't think Louisville can guard it. Of course, Louisville is going to take half their shots from 3. If they make 40% of them, and if Mikal Brown plays like he's supposed to, they'll still probably win. But when you're the less physical team as the favorite and less athletic, and you have to hit 3s to win, that sounds like what the mid-major team has to do. So I do think South Florida has a real chance.
I think Isaiah Nelson's the best big man in this game as well. South Florida big. That obviously goes in the Bulls' favor. One minor note to this, too, that made me laugh. This game is being played in Buffalo. Brian Hodgson.
That's where Brian Hodgson's from.
Correct. And he's also one of the front runners to get the Syracuse job in the same general area. Just a little note. I'm sure going to hear a little bit about that on the broadcast. I'm going to go South Florida. I think while this is an easy upset pick, it's easy for a reason. I also don't trust Pat Kelsey in big spots. Give me South Florida right now.
I'm also going South Florida. We're going to have to differentiate soon. This is not good.
We'll see. We're only what, 10 matchups in, 5 matchups in.
Okay.
Yeah,
5 matchups in.
We'll be fine. Yeah, we got to be cranking through. This is going to be a long episode. Buckle in. buckle in. Michigan State, North Dakota State. That game, the winner of that game will face the winner of Louisville, the South Florida. What's your take on this matchup?
North Dakota State ran through the Summit League because they were an unbelievable shot volume team. Steals, offensive rebounds, not happening against Michigan State. They're not winning this game.
I'm with you. I'm with you as well. This has been pretty chalky, by the way. I think one of my larger takeaways from this bracket release was that this is the chalkiest region that there can be, at least in the first round. The matchups for a lot of these double-digit seeds, I'm not a huge fan of. The one double-digit seed I do have winning in this region, it's going to shock you. It's UCF.
It's UCF.
They get UCLA in the 7-10 game. In all seriousness, on top of how much I enjoy UCF, just the chaos style of play they have, UCLA's injuries to Dent and Bilodeau are concerning for me. Even if both of them play, it's hard to imagine both of them being 100%. And those are like the two guys you do not want to have be in dinged up this time of year. So that also goes in UCF's favor. But a lot of things could say UCLA wins this game too, because before being hurt, Donovan Dent was playing as legitimately as well as anybody in the country.
So UCF's last 5 games: home loss to Baylor, home loss to Oklahoma State without Presafala, 15-point road loss to West Virginia, barely beat Cincinnati, barely, and then killed by Arizona. That's a really bad last 5. And then we talk about UCLA at the beginning of the show, UCLA and their crazy run in the Big Ten. If Donovan Dent doesn't get hurt, UCLA very well could have been in the Big Ten final today, or Sunday, whenever you're watching this show. UCLA is still really good, and I think that the fact that they've lost all these games on the road in Big Ten play, just like last year, has kind of made their value so much so that they're underrated. And I think that this is better than this team's way better than a 7 seed at full strength on a neutral site. Although UCF will have its challenges, I just think UCLA is too good.
I was a little disappointed in this matchup because UCLA was one of those teams that I had penciled in as being like, okay, here's a 6, 7, 8 seed. I can have winning a couple games. But then the injuries happen. And again, I think those are the two guys who you cannot have dinged up if you're UCLA. They're not a super deep team. They rely on Dent a ton. When they need buckets, it's a Dent, Bilodeau, pick and pop, quite frankly. And if that's out of your system, I don't know really what this UCLA team is going to rely on. Again, there's some speculation because it is Monday. We'll see what happens when they hit the court. But I got to pick my chaos agents too. That's part of it.
Yeah.
UConn and Furman round out the region in the 2-15 game. We had talked about Furman in our last episode as being a team that could potentially pull an upset in the first round. UConn has, continued to win, except for the St. John's game in the Big East Championship, but they haven't looked great doing so. Is this a potential massive 15-2 upset, or does this have the potential to be that way?
Furman being so tall and being very steady gave them the opportunity to sort of take a team that was maybe a little undersized as a power conference team. Like if they got Louisville, for example, random example, maybe it's a little bit different. But UConn's going to dominate this physically with their strength, with their rebounding. Furman's last in the SoCon in turnover margin. UConn's not much of a turnover team, but they're going to get some here, get out transition. Their half-court offense has been bad. They'll get some transition looks. This is not a good matchup for Furman. And as a 15, I think the back was against the wall to begin.
I would have liked to have seen them on the 14 line because I think there are some 3 seeds they could have knocked off. Being a 15 is tough for Furman. And also getting UConn after a loss, that kind of loss too. I think you're going to get the motivated version of UConn, which you do not want to play if you're anybody in the country, let alone Furman. We'll get to picking the winner from this region in a little bit when we go to our final 4 picks. Let's move to the West region now. Again, this is Arizona's region. They are facing Long Island in the first round. LIU, I think, is a pretty solid 16 seed compared to like most 16 seeds are. I do think Duke and Arizona have kind of gotten screwed over a little bit in that regard. But still, this is Arizona by a lot.
Yeah. In a way, LIU is kind of like, in the same way that Duke and Siena are similar, Arizona and LIU are similar. They're really athletic and get to the paint a ton, and you do not want to be the mid-major team as the athletic paint-bound team because you're going to get demolished on the inside.
LIU is really good in transition. They've been good at the rim on both ends, protecting it and scoring at the rim. but that's against NEC competition. That is not against Mo Rivas and Toby Awaka and Arizona. That is a different beast there. If Arizona wins, they will face the winner of Villanova, Utah State in the 8-9 game. This is an intriguing matchup for me. I don't know if either one has a true chance to beat Arizona, which is going to make me eat my words when there inevitably is a close game or an upset does happen. But these are two teams I think are very, very solid. I think we've talked about that with Villanova, particularly all season long, where we don't know what the ceiling is, but the floor has been pretty high because of the way they play defense. Utah State obviously has been one of the most consistent programs in the country for the last several years, particularly the last two under Jared Calhoun. What's going to decide this matchup in your mind?
Do you know Villanova has 0 top 70 Ken Pom wins in 2026?
With basically they didn't beat UConn or St. John's.
And they haven't played Seton Hall since 2025.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. But they've just been like, we talk about the Mountain West is kind of just beating up on each other. That's kind of what happened to Villanova and in the Big East, which is really just a poor company. The Mountain West outside of St. John's and UConn is better than the Big East. And I think that we're going to see that in this game. Utah State, the way they're able to force turnovers, the way they're able to win the rim on both sides of the floor, especially Villanova without Matt Hodge. Utah State is the better team.
I think Utah State is the higher ceiling team. I've come to really trust Villanova this year. Now, it has been mostly against Big East level competition, but they have generally beaten the teams they should beat. The issue has been how high the ceiling is, but with Kevin Willard and the way they play defense, that tends to travel, I would say, a little bit more. I'm going to lean Villanova here, but I do think this is going to be one of the best games of the first round.
Yeah, they beat who they're supposed to beat, except for Georgetown, and this will be the last obligatory Georgetown mention of the season. I
do want to say, my bold prediction for the Big East and for Georgetown was that they would finish top 3 in the Big East. They were one of the final 3 teams left playing in the Big East tournament. That's all.
Conference tournaments don't count. We already.
That's all we're saying.
That. I'm sorry.
They're one of the last 3 teams left.
We can
one of the last 3
move
teams.
On.
The 5-12 matchup in the West region is Wisconsin and High Point. This has the potential to be a really, really good game as well. Wisconsin has been playing at a really high level the last couple of weeks. Nick Boyd and John Blackwell, I think, have the potential to be a backcourt that takes over this tournament. But High Point is a really, really good 12 seed. A mid-major capable of winning a game or 2 in this tournament. I'm expecting this to be a very fun matchup. What about you?
I don't think it'll be close.
Okay.
The thing with High Point is extremely dependent on getting steals. It is what they do better than basically any. They're second in the country in steal percentage. They need to turn you over because this half-court offense is pretty one-note, and they're extremely small. Wisconsin is 5th in the country in offensive turnover, or 3rd in the country in offensive turnover rate, and 1st in offensive steal rate. They get the ball stolen from them, the least of any team in the country, and High Point is 2nd in getting steals. Guess who's winning that matchup of turnover rate? It's going to be Wisconsin. High Point's not getting their steals. They're not going to be able to do the one thing they are better at than anybody in the country other than McNeese. And if you were going to tell me that a mid-major team is going to pull off an upset doing the one thing they're not going to be able to do what they're best at, it's not happening. No way.
The recipe for a High Point win is to have Nick Boyd or John Blackwell being off. And the way they're playing right now,
injured, out.
Would you expect them to be off? I would not at all. Yeah. Give us the Badgers in that matchup. Arkansas and Hawaii is the 4-13 in this region. The winner of that game will play the winner of Wisconsin High Point. Hawaii has been a very solid all season long in the Big West. Arkansas seems to be peaking at the right time, winning the SEC tournament championship. Darius Acuff averaged over 30 points per game and over 7 assists in the SEC tournament. Speaking of guards playing at a high level, he is somebody who can take over this tournament on his own. Is this as simple as just Arkansas's role and they'll handle business, or can Hawaii give them some trouble?
Hawaii is going to have to do something different with their defense, which is like very famously a no help whatsoever, keep everyone one-on-one, isolate every action, and you cannot isolate Darius Acuff, and you cannot isolate Malik Thomas. And honestly, after the SEC tournament, you can't isolate Trevon Brazile. He's been amazing. I wouldn't be surprised if Hawaii completely changes it up and plays zone, which our colleague Jordan Majeski said they might do. That's the only way they can win. Hawaii is old. Arkansas is young. Hawaii is taller than Arkansas. If they can scheme that A-Cup stuff out, which they have 5 days to prepare for, it's not impossible.
I'm picking Hawaii. This is one of my upsets. I think the size matters. I think the defense matters. Even if they don't switch up to zone, which I think would be a very smart thing to do, because John Calipari has famously been very outward in terms of his teams don't practice against zones, and that's been an issue for them the last couple of years. It was an issue for them
in the similar
yes,
seed.
it was an issue for them the last time they were in. I think they were in the top right region as well when this Kentucky team lost Oakland, because Oakland played a defense that was not man, and he struggled with that. Even if Hawaii sticks with their no help, the fact it is different than what Arkansas normally faces, I think could throw some wrinkles into things for two reasons. Number one, there is the idea of the way Darius Acuff is playing. Maybe you let Darius Acuff get his and you worry about not having anybody else go off on you, which the no help thing works with. Number two, a lot of what Arkansas wants to do is get their guards going downhill, drawing help, and swinging the ball out and getting some open looks that way. But if you're not helping, you're not collapsing the defense when you're doing that. Arkansas is the more talented team. Arkansas is the better team on most nights. But I do think that defense is going to potentially throw some wrinkles in for Arkansas. And I don't trust Calipari to totally figure that out right now. I could look very, very dumb in a couple of days because Arkansas is playing at that level right now. But there's the different things Hawaii does, I think, could give Arkansas some trouble here.
You're starting to make my brain run now. Like Iran Ganot got Hawaii's coach, got the defense from Randy Bennett at St. Mary's. And you know who played for Randy Bennett? Todd Golden. And Todd Golden at Florida runs a similar defense to that. A lot of also very little help and a lot of isolation. And Darius Acuff had one of his worst games of the season against Florida. Arkansas scored under a point per possession in that one. So now that the ball's rolling, maybe.
I mean, it's something as simple as you're used to reading the help defender to make your decision. If there's no help defender, like can you make the quick process there? Of course, the alternative is Darius Acuff has 55 points and Arkansas wins by 20.
Yes. That would be the alternative. It's a bad alternative for Hawaii.
Yes. So I'm going Hawaii. You're going Arkansas.
I'll take Arkansas, though. You make a very good point.
Thank you. That's all I want to do is provide logic behind my bad decisions. The 6-11 matchup. This is the first four game we have because BYU, the 6th seed, is going to face the winner of Texas and NC State in the first four. Kind of surprised NC State dropped to the first four, to be honest with you, although their play late in the season is warranted of a first four spot. Texas, okay. They were going to be around the bubble cut line anyway. Talk about the Texas NC State matchup, and then do you think either of those teams could give BYU a real test?
Well, they already played. Texas won. It was in Maui, which barely counts. And Jordan Pope had 7 threes, which will not happen again. Texas, like Dalen Swain and Matas Vogatitis, have such a big interior advantage here. Mm-hmm. NC State's tiny, and Texas is huge. But NC State did a fantastic job of limiting both of them and forcing Texas to be an outside shooting team. If Texas can get inside here, which they've just spent the entire SEC campaign doing, NC State can't defend them, and I think Texas wins. I
think so too. NC State has gotten dominated inside by every team with size that they've played in the ACC. Texas too, that was back in November, earlier in the season. I know both teams had a bunch of transfers and new coaches, and they're kind of working things out. Texas has come a lot further since that point than NC State has, I think. So I'm going to rely on Texas a little bit more there. If Texas wins, obviously you get a former Big 12 matchup would have been BYU. They were in there for about 2 years together. Can Texas continue the run, beat BYU, or is this a matter of BYU having AJ DeBonsa and the rest is history?
Well, what I know is whoever plays BYU, there'll be no defense in that game because neither NC State, Texas, or BYU play an ounce of defense. But BYU will have the best player in AJ DeBonsa. Dalen Swain is actually a pretty good matchup. The two of them are like very similar in a lot of ways. DeBonsa's a little more explosive, but I think BYU wins this either way. They're they'll have the extra time to prep. I think it'll be maybe not a long tournament run for BYU, but they should be able to get out of this first one.
I'm with you. If they do, they would face the winner of Gonzaga, Kennesaw State. Gonzaga just, I'm so used to not even thinking about Gonzaga the first weekend. That's just like, yep, automatically pencil Gonzaga moving forward. Should Kennesaw give me or anybody else a reason to pause in doing so?
One of the dumbest things I ever did was picking Georgia in the bracket last year to beat Gonzaga. It took like 3 minutes, and I was like, what have I done? What have I done? I'm not doing it again. They're going to beat Kennesaw. Kennesaw is a good, physical, strong team. They're not beating Gonzaga. They're not beating Gonzaga.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Miami, Florida, because we have 2 Miamis in the NCAA tournament. I'll rant on that later. And Missouri. This matchup, I think, could be interesting because both of these teams have been good, not great this year, have shown some flashes, but have been inconsistent. Who is going to get the edge here in your mind?
Malik Reneau versus Mark Mitchell is quietly one of the best individual matchups we're going to get in the entire first round. That's a very even and very strong matchup. Missouri has 3-point shooting issues and they have turnover issues. And Miami forces a lot of turnovers and they allow a ton of threes. So Missouri is going to have their issue exposed, and I don't think Miami will have theirs. I think that Miami is a more complete team. I think they're a more consistent team. And I think they have the best player in this game in Reneau. And I think that they'll end up beating Missouri.
I could see this being a game of runs, but I think there's going to get to a point, 10 minutes off the second half, where Miami starts to put some distance between themselves and Missouri and holds on there. Would be a good win for them. 2-15 matchup in this region is Purdue and Queens. Purdue obviously coming off of the Big Ten run. We talked about how maybe don't believe everything you saw in the Big Ten run, but they should still have a sizable advantage over Queens. Queens does shoot the 3 really well, and I do think their guards have solid size and can match up with Purdue in the backcourt. To me, Purdue's front court is just way too good.
Queens allowed 106 to Auburn, 108 to Arkansas, 111 to Wake Forest, 94 to Villanova, and 94 to Virginia. Purdue is set at 93 on KenPom. They're scoring more. It's going to be 100.
100 plus. Yeah, I think we'll go Purdue there as well. Again, we'll pick the winner of that region once we get to our final 4 picks. Let's move down the bracket to the Midwest. This is Michigan's region. Michigan will face the winner of our first 4 game between UMBC and Howard. Fun little DMV matchup there between UMBC and Howard. Which, side note, the resurgence of the UMBC Twitter account the last weekend since UMBC won the American East Championship has been phenomenal to see. Just burning people and teams left and right with no remorse. Phenomenal. Can either of those teams give Michigan a reason to sweat?
No.
Fair enough. I'm with you. Between UMBC and Howard, is there anything we should be looking for?
Howard should win. Howard's a really good team. Bryce Harris and Cedric Taylor in the front court are one of my favorite. They're both 6'7" and very switchable. They're a lot of fun. I think they'll beat UMBC and then get destroyed.
If Michigan does advance, they'll face the winner of Georgia and St. Louis. Interesting 8-9 matchup here. It would be a lot more interesting if St. Louis was not faltering down the stretch the way that they are. I believe they're 5-5 in their last 10 games. Can they get it done against Georgia?
Probably not. The thing is, this was a pretty bad matchup for what I was expecting, what would be a reasonable chance for St. Louis. So I really did want to pick in the first round. My favorite stat in this game, St. Louis as a team has 61 total dunks on the season. Santos Surreal has 79 total dunks on the season. He's more athletic than the entire St. Louis. Like Robbie Avila versus Santos Surreal is the funniest, best center matchup ever because it's like Jokic it's like Jokic versus Jalen Durham. Yeah. Like it's so fun. Passing versus dunking. The thing with St. Louis is they need to outshoot you on both ends because they're not good on the glass, they're not good in the turnover margin, and they're not good in the free throw margin. And because Georgia's 10, 15, 20 times more athletic, they're going to win all of those factors. So the only way St. Louis wins is by shooting 40% from 3 and Georgia shooting 25%. It's just, you didn't want to see St. Louis get an SEC opponent, and that's what happened.
I thought you were going to go the difference in body types between Avila and Cyril instead of the
Yeah, I
distance
mean, one of
goals.
them goes to the weight room a little bit. One's a little more frequented in the weight room than the other, perhaps.
I'm still going to lean St. Louis in part because I trust Josh Schertz a lot more than I trust Mike White, to be quite honest with you. I think there's a good portion of that as well. Maybe it is the Avila factor in this, but do you remember in 2021 where Illinois got the 1 seed that was also in this bottom right region, and the 8-9 games between Josh Pastner's Georgia Tech and Loyola Chicago and Cameron Krutwig?
Mm-hmm.
And Loyola Chicago ended up making the Sweet 16 out of there, kind of surprisingly, as the 9 seed. I'm not picking St. Louis to go to the Sweet 16. I'm not. But I do think this kind of gives off the eerie vibes of that, given Illinois and where they were in the Big Ten. It's kind of like Michigan. They're viewed as the nation's best team. We're kind of inconsistent down the stretch. Then you have a really, really good mid-major who's really well coached, Loyola Chicago 2021, St. Louis this year. I think they can work their offense against Georgia's defense. Georgia has been bad SEC play, quite frankly, for most of the season, particularly on the defensive end. I think there's room for St. Louis to exploit that. So I'm going to go with Billikens. I don't think a Georgia win would shock me because St. Louis has not been playing very well either over the last couple of games. But again, that's where I'm going to rely on coaching. I'm going to trust Schertz over Mike White.
I just loved St. Louis all year, and obviously their entire team runs through Robbie Avila and what he does, and then they just got handed, boom, here's the best dunker in college basketball, and then boom, if you beat them, here's the 7'3" passing hub Adai Mara as well. And it's just like, that was an unfair draw for St. Louis.
It is a bad draw, but if you want a better draw, don't go 5-5 in your last 10 games.
Yeah, or lose your championship.
Yeah, yep. That was a hell of an ending, by the way. St. Louis and Dayton. Oh, that was a fun final 20 seconds. The 5-12 matchup in this region is between Texas Tech and Akron. Texas Tech, obviously, no JT Toppin. Christian Anderson is going to be back in this game. Texas Tech announced after he got hurt, playing on the dumb glass court in the Big 12 tournament. Excuse me. He should be back. Is that enough for Texas Tech to get past Akron here, or can Akron give Texas Tech some real trouble?
Texas Tech's issue is they're small, not physically dominant, and 3-point dependent without JT Toppin. Those are all the things that Akron already is. They're 350th in height. They're 65th in 3-point percentage in terms of rate. They're 14th in making them. These teams are very similar in the post-Toppin era for Texas Tech. But of course, the best player in this game by far is Christian Anderson. As much as I love Tavari Johnson at Akron, Christian Anderson is the best player. This is another example of two teams that play very similar, at least right now. And the Power Conference team just does it better.
The Power Conference team does it better. I am going to go Akron. I don't feel 100% confident in it. I do think this is another popular upset pick because Toppin is out, and that obviously does factor into the decision here. If Toppin does play, I don't think Texas Tech's a 5 seed, and they're looking at potential Final Four rather than the first round exit here. Akron is, this is their third straight year in the tournament. This is the third straight year a lot of these guys have played together and have been in the NCAA tournament. Akron's top 20 in the country in men's continuity. They're not very deep. There's a lot of guys who have played together and have been in these spots. The last 2 years, Akron has really pushed their opponents in the first round. I think it's Arizona and Creighton the last 2 years. They've pushed them in the first round for about a half and then fallen apart the last 10, 15 minutes of the game, and the results have been massive. It's been like 28-point win and a 20-something point or 17-point win, something like that. I think just kind of law averages, I think this Akron team is good enough to win a game. I agree Texas Tech is a bad matchup for them, but I do think at some point, like, Akron hasn't won a game in program history. John Gross is a good coach. I do think they have a lot of good guards, good shot makers. I'm going to take Akron. I would probably pick Texas Tech 4 times out of 5, but you only play the game once. Weird things happen. I'm going to go with the Zips.
All right. We got another opposition.
Yep. Winner of that game will face the winner of Alabama and Hofstra. Maybe the best guard matchups in the first round between Hofstra's guards and Alabama's guards. To me, this is very much like you're thinking. Alabama just does it better. Are you in the same line here?
I think we could copy and paste what I said about Hofstra in our last show. They're unbelievable at denying the rim. You cannot score at the basket against Hofstra. You cannot. You know who's first in the country in 3-point rate?
Alabama.
Alabama's number one. So the number one 3-point shooting team in terms of amount of times they do it against a team whose by far biggest strength is their rim defense. What a disaster. Hofstra is not going to be able to do the one thing they're good at because Alabama is not going to bother with the rim. They're going to be like, well, this guy's an amazing rim protector. Let's just shoot 73s. And they're going to win that way.
Thank goodness they don't have Charles Bediako to tempt them to trying to go down low. They can just worry about the 3-point shooting. Yeah.
They should take 80% of their shots from three.
Nate Oates will gladly do that. They will gladly do that. The 6-11 matchup is another matchup that is going to have the first 4 winner going and playing Tennessee, the 6 seed. The 11 seed is going to be the winner of SMU and Miami, Ohio. We'll discuss the inclusion of Miami, Ohio in the first 4 here in a second. But from a matchup perspective, Redhawks, Mustangs, what do you see there and who can potentially give Tennessee a bigger problem?
My guess is that SMU is bluffing BJ Edwards and he's not going to play. That's just a guess. In which case, I just don't think SMU is a very good basketball team at all without BJ Edwards. They were already, low on depth to begin with, and without him, probably their second best player, if not their best player, honestly. I don't think they have a chance. Miami, Ohio is beatable, but I think Miami wins that game. And I really hope we get Miami and Tennessee, I would pick Miami.
Okay. Why would you pick Miami?
Because Tennessee is the worst shot-making team I've ever seen outside of Jacoby Gillespie. And honestly, outside of Jacoby Gillespie, because watching Nate Ament just throw up brick after brick against Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament hurt my eyes. With Miami, they're going to be steady. They're not going to pressure you. They're going to send everyone to the glass and try to get as many rebounds as possible. But we've seen with Tennessee, they can get half their misses and still not win because their second shot offense is disgusting. And I'm not worried about them getting all these second chances and all these extra shots over Miami because they can't hit them. And Miami has shown, of all of the things they're good at, they're a shot-making team. They're one of the best shot-making teams in the country. And in that case, it will require shot-making that I just have not seen from Tennessee, and I think Miami pulls off the upset.
I would love for that to be the case. The fact that Miami, when undefeated in the regular season, slipped up one time. Now, losing to UMass is not a good loss by any stretch of the imagination. I understand the stuff on Miami's schedule. I understand UMass stinks. Slipping up one time and finding yourself in the first 4 indicates that that was all they could do. If they lost twice, they would be out, which is, I don't think, a message you want to send to mid-majors. On top of everything else, we talked about this last show. Yes, you schedule more teams, like try and schedule better. Miami tried, like they Travis Seal talked about it. Matt Brown at Extra Points got all the records of who they tried to schedule and teams telling them no. Basically, it is a byproduct of the system where everyone wants to bump up the net rating. Everybody wants to bump up the KenPom rating. Best ways to do that are to blow out quad 4 teams and play quad 1 games. We're going to get mostly quad 1 games, quad 2 games in your conference. So let's just load up non-con with teams that we know we're not going to beat or we're not going to lose to, and we can beat by however many we want to. That, the byproduct of that, leaves teams like Miami kind of in this spot. And Miami did, yes, you would want to see them schedule more. Some of that is out of their control. Some of that is teams they thought were going to be better were not better. You want to see them handle their business more, or I say more impressively than they did. They won all the games. How many of them were close? That could bode really well for them in the tournament. You get in some of these close games, like if the Tennessee game is close, you can trust Nate Ament to figure it out in one of these games, or do you trust Miami, Ohio, who's been in the situation every game for the last month, really, to figure it out? But to have a team slip up one time against your schedule, 31-1, and your reward is to essentially play into the round of 64. I hate that. That's not what this tournament is about. At the same time, they can prove otherwise if they go out and they win like you think they will.
You know what I think is funny?
What?
Miami obviously had a bad loss to UMass. NC State, who has, 5-10 times the amount of losses that Miami, Ohio does, their loss to Georgia Tech is probably worse.
Oh, I was there for that game. It was gross. It was.
But like I'm saying, UMass is probably better than Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And NC State had that loss and 10 others.
Yeah. The Georgia Tech loss was gross.
And they're in Dayton.
Yeah. Yep. So I say all that about Miami, Ohio. Two different conversations. I would take SMU, and I'm also taking SMU to beat Tennessee. The byproduct of this is don't take Tennessee. Take whoever wins that game. You know how much I love Boobie Miller. I think that's going to matter in this game.
The team's bad. The team's
not. The team is fine. The team is okay. I do think Miami, Ohio, what they've shown on the court, other than winning, is that they don't play a lot of defense. And if you don't play a lot of defense against a team that can get as hot as SMU can, I would lean in SMU's favor. There's also the Andy Enfield factor, where his teams occasionally, not all the time, but a good portion of the time, play their best in the NCAA tournament for whatever reason. Who knows?
Dunk City.
Let's move down the bracket because the winner of that game, Tennessee, and then the play-in game, will face the winner Virginia and Wright State. Virginia almost won the ACC tournament. Their only two losses in the last month and a half have been to Duke. Wright State is not Duke, but can Wright State do anything to give Virginia some issues?
I love Wright State, but this is a horrible matchup. They are really small and not physically intimidating whatsoever. And they are facing the best shot blocking team in the country in Virginia. So this is just a huge physical mismatch. Wright State's going to look like a mid-major team on this court, and I don't think this will be a close. I think this will be one of the bigger blowouts of the 3-14 matchups.
You are not going to out-scheme Virginia with how solid they've been and how good of a coach Ryan Odom is. It's just not going to happen. Kentucky.
Also, these teams have a common opponent. They both played Butler. Virginia lost. Yeah. Virginia lost by 7. Wright State lost by 25. That is an 18-point transitive problem.
That's when I thought Butler had a chance to be good this year, unfortunately. Let's get to the 7-10 matchup because that is between Kentucky and Santa Clara. Another really intriguing matchup, other than, there's Kentucky's a 7 seed, what's going to happen with them. But Santa Clara getting as an at-large without really a sweat as a 10 seed. What do you see in this matchup?
I have not thought that Kentucky was good since November. I still don't think Kentucky's good. And I think Santa Clara is genuinely the better basketball team. And I think they're going to win here. It's really that simple. I just think Santa Clara is a better team. I don't think Kentucky's good.
I think Santa Clara is a better overall team. I'm going to hear me say this a lot if you have not already. Guard play is going to matter a ton, the way it always does in these games, particularly when it gets close. And I would expect this game to be relatively close. I don't know, whoever wins, I'm not expecting this to be a blowout. There's going to be a couple possession game either direction. With the way Kentucky's fan base travels and with how well both Denzel Aberdeen and Otega Owe are playing, I'm going to give the slight edge to Kentucky. Again, a close win, maybe a 5 or 6 point win, but I'm going to give the slight edge to Kentucky here.
Can I just point out that you're being very hypocritical by talking about how guard play matters and picking against Darius Acuff and Christian Anderson?
Let's move to Iowa State and Tennessee State. Thank you for that. Yep. Let's not act like Akron doesn't have good guards as well. Let's not act like Akron doesn't have good guards as well.
For those that aren't looking at the YouTube show, Brian just went and crossed out the matchups in his bracket so he can reconsider it.
No, you got me on that one. That's good. But again, let's not act like the Akron doesn't have good guards as well. They're a team full of really good guards, and Hawaii's Hawaii. Who doesn't enjoy a nice Hawaiian shirt?
Yeah.
Iowa State and Tennessee State in the 2-15 matchup. Nolan Smith has done a really good job with Tennessee State. His first year in charge there, getting them to the NCAA tournament, getting them a 15 seed. But I don't know if they have anything that can really, really pressure Iowa State or make Iowa State sweat.
Tennessee State's going to get murdered at the hoop here, just destroyed at the rim. Iowa State under Otzelberger is one of the best bye game opponent teams in the country. They just beat the crap out of bye games, and this is essentially a bye game, and they're going to win by 25, 30 points.
Yeah. Again, we'll pick the winner of this region. We'll go through our final 4 picks. After this final region, the South region, Florida's region, where Florida will face the winner of the last play-in game, the last first 4 games. It's not a play-in game. All of these teams are NCAA tournament teams because these teams both got at automatic bids. Prairie View A&M and Lehigh. Lehigh was talking about in their Patriot League title game that they want Duke. They got Florida instead. If they're able to get past Prairie View, can them or Prairie View give Florida anything?
No.
I'm with you.
No.
Any lean in the Prairie View Lehigh matchup?
The SWAC teams have done really well in the first four in the last couple of years. Prairie View completely changed up the way they played. They were an offensive-minded team at the start of SWAC play. Now they're a defensive-minded team, and they got way better when that happened. Yeah. I think there's a very real chance they win.
Yeah. They were the 8th seed in the SWAC tournament, but context matters. Philosophy shift. They start playing much better. No philosophy shift for either Clemson or Iowa in the 8-9 game here. This game might be first to 50 wins. It will not be one of the more appealing games to watch, but should be high-level basketball either way. Two really good coaches in this matchup. Which way are you leaning?
I love picking Clemson when they play a really fast team because there's no better coach in the country at slowing down a fast opponent than Brad Brownell. He's unbelievable at picking a fast team, being like, nah, you're playing 65 possessions. You're playing our way. Ben McCollum's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's 55 possessions. Let's play as slow as possible. And that's really bad news for Clemson, who will be without Carter Welling. Iowa's struggled with size and athleticism. That is not this Clemson team. I think Iowa wins.
Yeah, I think these teams are kind of carbon copies of each other in that way. One of them has Bennett Sturts. We'll go with the team that has Bennett Sturts.
Yeah, that's a big mismatch.
Yeah. Vanderbilt and McNeese in the 5-12 matchup here. McNeese was able to upset Clemson in the first round last year. Can they do it again against a Vanderbilt team that is playing some of the best basketball since December?
Wisconsin and High Point matchup, just completely exact same thing. High Point second in turnover rate. McNeese is first. First in turnovers forced, first in steal percentage. Vanderbilt is 11th in turnover offense and 9th in steal percentage offense. Can't steal it from Vanderbilt. They have the best, one of the 5 most steady guard duos in the country in Tyler Tanner and Duke Miles. For McNeese, who is entirely dependent on steals, couldn't have drawn a worse matchup, really.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Vanderbilt, too. You take what happens during conference tournaments with a grain of salt because it is just one data point. But seeing Vanderbilt get back to looking like this, and I know it was one game against Florida and we kind of poo-poo it away. Vanderbilt had struggled because they had not handled size. That game, they made Florida play their way. They're like, yeah, we're not as big as you, but I think our guards are much better than you. And they really got underneath Florida's guards. They caused a lot of turnovers, particularly early in that game. And that, to me, I think was big for Vanderbilt, not only to show to me, selfishly, that they could play at that level against a big team, but to themselves, that they could play at that level against a big team. Obviously, McNeese is not that. But I think we're seeing Vanderbilt kind of get rolling at the momentum that they had early in the season when they were undefeated going into January.
McNeese played one power conference team this year. Michigan went 7 of 23 from 3, 30%, 7 makes. They won by 41 points.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt will win.
Yep. I'm with you. Winner of that game will face the winner of Nebraska and Troy. The Huskers have gone from potential Final Four team to let's see if we can win the first NCAA tournament game in program history. Do they win the first game in program history here?
Yes. Fantastic matchup for Nebraska. Troy is one of the 10 most strict rim 3 teams in the country. Think Alabama, no mid-range. Only rim, only threes. Nebraska is a top 5 rim denial in the country. You don't get there against the way that they double absolutely everything. So Troy's going to shoot 75, maybe 80% of their shots from 3 here. They're 219th in the country in 3-point percentage. They're without their stretch 5 and Theo Sang. Nebraska's going to get their first win.
I'm going the other way. I'm going with Troy. I had Troy, we talked about this in our last episode, was one of my favorite mid-majors this season for a spot like this. They're 3-1 this year in quad 1 and quad 2 games. My concern was Troy is not athletic at all. My concern is if they got matched up against an overly athletic team that could just run them off the court. Nebraska, for as good as they are, is not an athletic team. And I think Troy can keep it close, and the longer you keep it close, the more game pressure is going to build on you. Troy's been really good in the close games this season. They've been really good in close games against high-level competition on the road, away from home. this season. I think this is one where Troy gets it at the end. Could be one of the more fun games of the first round.
I think Troy's going to score 55 points maximum.
I think Nebraska's going to score 54.
Okay. I mean, it's possible. I just don't think Troy's going to score more than 55 points.
Bottom half of this region and the 6-11 game is North Carolina against VCU. UNC obviously does not have Caleb Wilson in this game, which is unfortunate because I do think UNC's obviously ceiling would have looked much different had he been available. Because he's out, I think this is another popular upset pick as well. Is it that for you?
I'll be honest, this is my biggest shrug game of the first round. Like, I don't know, and I don't really care because they're both going to lose to Illinois pretty easily. This is not a 6-11 matchup. VCU's good, but I mean, the committee said it on the show that they were not an at-large team had they not won their tournament. And then North Carolina, of course, is just, you take all of the real opportunity they have of winning anything out with Caleb Wilson done. I would imagine North Carolina comes out on top, and they're going to lose to Illinois.
UNC is good enough to win a couple of games even without Caleb Wilson when they're playing their best. Henry Vasar is still one of the best bigs in the entire country. When Seth Trimble, Derek Dixon, and Jaron Stevenson, let's say, all play at their best level, they're still a good team that can beat just about anybody. The problem is we get that very rarely. The inconsistency with that group, other than Vasar, is a real problem. And I'm not expecting them to suddenly turn it on against a VCU team that is very excited to be here, is very energetic. It's going to play with a lot of intensity and effort. UNC has not necessarily done the best in those kind of matchups against smaller, quicker teams. I'm going to go VCU here.
Yeah, very reasonable. I will take North Carolina, but again, no strong conviction.
Yep. Illinois is playing Penn and head coach Fran McCaffrey. Some fun there, getting Fran McCaffrey back in against a Big Ten team. Sounds like you're a big proponent of Illinois in this game, though.
Yes, this will be the biggest victory, margin to victory for any 3-14. I know I said that was going to be Virginia Red State. It'll be Illinois Penn. They'll win by like 35 points.
So you're not expecting TJ Power to go for 44 points and 14 rebounds like he did in the Ivy League title game?
Nick Townsend's a great player. Getting guarded by Nick Townsend or getting guarded by the tallest team in the country in Illinois, different ball game. The 7-10 matchup is between St. Mary's and Texas A&M. I am very excited for this contrast of styles. St. Mary's wants to play as slow as possible. A&M wants to play as quickly as possible. Which style wins out? Well, St. Mary's got this exact same draw last year. They got a really speedy SEC team that loves to force turnovers in Vanderbilt last year. And they've made that score 59-56. They completely got their style to stick. Randy Bennett is one of the best coaches in the country. Give him a week to prep. I think that this is very much St. Mary's style of game. And yet, I still think Texas A&M is going to come out on top because St. Mary's does not have the same guard play as last year with Augustus Marciulionis moving forward. And Buckyball is going to get some steals here.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I think there are two things that are very, very different from this matchup to last year. First off, we've talked about this every time we've talked about St. Mary's this year. Last year's team is significantly better than this year's team. Much more veteran, much better guard play. I think that team is much, much better. The other side, A&M will not play slow. They might lose by 30, but they're going to lose by 30 playing their way. They're not changing up what they want to do. It's one of the things Buck McMillan we're going to play my style. We're going to find ways to win. It's one thing that's allowed them to overcome huge deficits this season, like in the blink of an eye, because they just keep it going. Eventually they hit and find some rhythm. I'm going to go Aggies in this game.
Yeah.
Last first round matchup, the 2-15 here is between Houston and Idaho. Can Idaho do anything to potentially upset Houston here?
I picked Idaho to win the Big Sky and the Jerome, and I owe a lot of thanks to Idaho for making me seem correct, even though I didn't win the Jerome conference tournament pool. And that's all the nice things I can say about Idaho for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. A smaller team around one big, not a great 3-point shooting team. They're good, but they want to kind of get downhill. Doing it against Big Sky is one thing. Doing it at a power conference team is another. Doing it against Houston is an entirely other thing. I'm going to leave the Cougs there as well. All right, so we've gone through all the first round matchups. Let's pick Final Four. Let's see who we got. Let's go back to the East. Duke's region. Who's coming out of there?
Well, we know how I feel about UConn, and I don't like Michigan State, and I don't really like Kansas, and I don't really like St. John's, and I think Louisville is going to lose in the first round. So Duke's hurt, but this is the easiest bracket of all four, at least in my opinion. For the 1 seed, I'm going to take Duke.
If Duke was healthy, I would have taken Duke. I think Duke is really only going to feel the loss of Caleb Foster in a Sweet 16 game against St. John's and St. John's pressure. And they're going to want to have that veteran presence, that point guard in that game. I think St. John's wins that game. I think St. John's and UConn play for a fourth time this season in the Elite Eight. But the Johnnies go to the Final Four.
St. John's having to go through Northern Iowa and Kansas is not an easy path. That is a challenging 2 games and 2 unbelievable defenses.
100%. 100%. There is something, though, about Rick Pitino. It feels like, he came to St. John's, bringing them to the Final Four. It feels like this is his shot. And since St. John's has started running Dylan Mitchell at more of the point, it has solved a lot of their spacing issues offensively. They are far from perfect, but I think it has taken them to the level we thought they were going to be at in the preseason. 5 feels like an underseed and probably a bad thing for Duke. Duke probably has a gripe with that, but that's the line of thinking there. I have them in the Final Four. Yeah. You have Duke. They will face the winner of the South region, Florida's region. So we'll kind of go down the bracket there. Who do you have coming out of that region?
I've been tooting Florida's horn all season, and I'm not going to pick them, at least as of right now. I'm going to take Illinois. I think that Illinois is the least discussed genuine national tournament threat in the country. Of their losses outside of Michigan in 2026, they've all been in overtime. They have 4 overtime losses, a Michigan loss, and that's it. They are healthy. They've had some issues clicking. Keaton Wagler's kind of hit a freshman slump. I think they're going to figure things out, and I just think that this team is too big, too talented, and too awesome 1 through 7 in their rotation to not make a run.
I have Florida and Illinois in my Elite Eight as well, facing off. And I do think whoever wins that game will play for the national championship. I think Florida is a tougher team. I think in that matchup with 2 massive teams, Keaton Wagler is the best guard. I know I keep talking about guard play. I don't think Boogie Flan is that far behind. I don't think Xavier Lee is that far behind as a backcourt with Wagler and Boswell combined. I trust Florida's front court a lot more, and Illinois has had a lot of success against other big teams because of the way they can invert their offense and space the court. All of Florida's bigs can guard on the perimeter. That's not a problem for them. It's where they shine. I think Florida's a little bit tougher. I got Florida going back to the Final Four.
I may change this in my actual bracket. It's still early, but I do think it'll be Florida and Illinois in the Elite Eight. That I feel pretty confident.
100%. Let's go to the other side. We'll go to the West, Arizona's region. Who's coming out of there?
Arizona. Arizona's region is going to be Arizona's. They're such a steady team, and I don't see any team that is consistent and good enough on both sides of the ball to be able to knock them off. I think Gonzaga might end up being the team they see in the Elite Eight. I just think Purdue's defensive issues against some of the athletic teams they'd have to play is going to be too much. Arizona probably would be my safest number 1 pick of any of the 4-1 seeds. I think they are the most likely to make the Final Four.
I have Arizona over Gonzaga as well in the Elite Eight. If Purdue beats Gonzaga, Arizona is going to shred Purdue's defense, I think. And if they face Gonzaga, I don't think EK is going to have a huge game. Arizona is going to have the advantage pretty much everywhere else, even other than EK. We'll go Arizona there. I do think, a path through Villanova, who'll make you work with their defense. Wisconsin, who I have there, who could be dangerous with how well Boyd and Blackwell are playing. And then, Gonzaga or Purdue. I think that could be tougher than we think it is. There are some slip-ups there. But Arizona, I said I was picking them back in the middle of February. What have they not shown they can do? What have they not proven? What have they not proven against high-level competition that they've seen, particularly in the Big 12? I feel as confident about that as I do anything. So I'm going to take Arizona there. The last region is the Midwest, Michigan's region. Do you have Michigan coming out of there, or who's coming out of the West in your mind? Or the Midwest, excuse me.
I do. I think this is a clear Michigan and Iowa State collision course. This should be the 1 versus the 2. Iowa State played some awesome ball in the Big 12 tournament and got outplayed by Arizona, a complete tip of the cap moment with Jaden Bradley's shot to end that game there. If this is a matchup in the Elite Eight, Iowa State's pretty rim dependent outside of Milan Momcilovic, and Michigan is big enough and athletic enough to deny the rim and switch onto Momcilovic and not give him any airspace. That's basically what Arizona did in that first matchup against Iowa State that gave them fits. And I think that Iowa State's not going to be able to score on the Wolverines, so I think Michigan is the fourth Final Four team.
I have Michigan and Iowa State as well. I think this game is a coin flip, much like Florida, Illinois, I think is a coin flip. But flip side of your argument, we've talked about Michigan. 3 things that has to happen for them to be good, like 3 real keys. Jackson Lenneborg has to be one of the best players on the court, which he probably will be in this matchup, although him and Joshua Jefferson matching up could be a lot of fun. They have to make their threes against an Iowa State team that is really good on the perimeter defending, and they limit threes, limit teams' 3-point success. And they have to take care of the ball against an Iowa State defense that forces a ton of turnovers and applies a lot of pressure. I'm leaning Iowa State for those reasons, and we get an Iowa State Arizona rematch in the Final Four, which could be hopefully as good as the one we just saw in the Big 12 tournament. But again, to me, that's a coin flip as well.
Yep.
All right, so we got our Final Fours. Who's cutting on the nets for you?
I think if it is Michigan and Arizona in the Final Four, that should be the championship game. Unfortunately, that's in the Final Four. I think that Arizona is going to win the national championship.
Yeah, I'm not moving off of that as well. I think they beat Florida in the title game, which would be storybook to have the game of the night of opening day also be the national championship game and kind of bookend the season that way. It'd be 2 Arizona wins as well there. But again, Arizona, I think, is the most proven, most consistent, most solid, most matchup-proof team there is in the country. Give me the Wildcats. I know everyone's screaming about Tommy Lloyd's March history and things like that. He is too good of a coach. This Arizona team is too good of a team to not break through at some point. I think this is the year he gets it done.
Arizona has 2 losses all season by a combined 7 points at Kansas and against full-strength Texas Tech that is no longer. They have been the best team in the country, and there's no reason to suggest otherwise.
Arizona Wildcats, weekend under review, are crowning you national champions. Let's hope that does not backfire on us. Let's hope. Matthew Winick, I'm Brian Rauf. Thank you guys very much for following along as we've broken down every first-round matchup here. We'll see what happens. We'll be back to recap all the action to point on a certain point. We'll see what the schedule is like this weekend. Because typically we record Friday, but I don't know what's going to happen there with first round matchups and things. We'll at least be back in a week to recap everything that happened over the first weekend to find out, I'm sure, where we were right and not wrong in anything.
We'll see.
It's the madness. It's a lot of fun. We're finally here. If you have not requested PTO for Thursday and Friday, you're a little bit behind, but I think if you do it Monday, I think if you do it this morning, I think you're still safe.
Oh, yeah.
For Matthew Winick, I'm Brian Rauf. Enjoy the madness.